So yesterday we started factoring polynomials completely. Today we're going to factor them completely, and we have to realize that there could be more than one step. Or sometimes they're just not factorable. So our first example is n squared plus 2n minus 1. Now since there's no number in front of the n, it's just a 1, we don't need to multiply that by c, by the negative 1. We just have to figure out factors of negative 1 that add up to positive 2. Are there any factors of negative 1 that add up to positive 2? Let's make it easy. There's only one set of factors of negative 1, and that is 1, negative 1. Does that add up to 2? Nope. So not factorable. Boom. Not factorable. All right, let's look at the next one. 4x cubed minus 44x squared plus 96x. What do we notice first? They all have an x. Okay, what else? They're all divisible by 4. So we can take 4 out of every single one, and we can take an x out of every single one. So that should be our first step, is factoring out the greatest common factor. Leaves us with what?
-11.
Okay, you just give me the middle term. I need a couple other terms. That's good.
4x times parentheses x squared minus 11x plus 24.
There we go. All right, so now we're looking for factors of 24 that add up to negative 11. We know if they multiply together to be positive 24, they're going to have the same sign. And if they're going to add up to be negative, they got to both be negative. So we got, Tyler? Negative 8 and negative 3. So it factors into x minus 8, x minus 3. There we go. Make sense? Questions yet? All right. Let's look at the next one. 50 h to the 4th minus 2h squared. What do we have to do first? Factor 2h squared out. What are we left with? That's not all. Minus 1. Because 2h squared divided by 2h squared is 1. Alright, what else we got here? We done?
When you do 2h squared times 5h.
I'm not sure where you're going with that.
Can you take h squared out?
No, because the one doesn't have an 8. It doesn't have an h squared.
Because
Isn't it done?
Because the square of 5 is 25, so you take the square root of 25.
Okay, you've got an idea of where we're going, but it's not complete.
So 5 minus 1 times 5 plus 1.
Not 5. 5h minus 1 times 5h plus 1. This is a difference of squares pattern. Remember, we can recognize that because there's two terms. 2 terms. There's a subtraction sign in the middle. And both of their terms are perfect squares. Okay, the square root of 25h squared is 5h, and the square root of 1 is 1. Okay, so when we have that, it factors into the difference and the sum of the two square roots. Make sense? Yes, no, maybe. All right. Now let's throw it into an equation. 3x cubed plus 18x squared equals negative 24x. So your first step, in this case, your first step in solving a polynomial is to get everything on one side. So we're adding a 24x first. Then we proceed by factoring. So what do we factor out first? 3x. They each got 3 going into them, and they each have an x. What are we left with? X squared plus 6x plus 8. Now we're looking for factors of 8 that add up to 6. 2 and 4 gives us x plus 4, x plus 2. Okay, so this is just like the last few examples we did where we're factoring completely. Now we apply our zero product property, which gives us 3 equations. What are they? Good. Because this product equals 0 whenever any one of the individual factors equals 0. So either 3x equals 0, or x plus 4 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. So if 3x equals 0, what does x equal? 0. If x plus 4 equals 0, what does x equal?
-4.
And if x plus 2 equals 0, what does x equal?
-2.
-2. So there's our 3 solutions. And we can check because if we plug them back in up in our original equation, okay, we should get matching sides. Make sense? Now for the fun part. Let's make it a word problem. So, we've got a terrarium, which is like an aquarium for land animals. Something like that. It's a science class thing. And they give us the dimensions for this terrarium. Let's see. It's a rectangular prism, and it has a volume of 4,608 cubic inches. And its length is more than 10 inches. Okay, its length is that 36 minus W. That's what they're calling the length. They want us to figure out what the dimensions have to be. Well, we know the volume. They gave us that, right? How do we find the volume of a rectangular prism? Yep, length times width times height. So that means that 36 minus W times W plus 4 times W has got to equal 4,608 because that's the volume they gave us. So our first step is going to be to multiply out everything on the left-hand side. Yeah, seems a little daunting, but let's take it one piece at a time. Let's start by multiplying these first 2 terms together. Okay, by foiling. So what do we get when we multiply the firsts? 36W. And the outsides? 144. And the insides? And the last? -4W. Now before, we also got to multiply that by W, but before we do, let's just straighten it out and add our like terms. So we'll start with -W squared, and 36W and -4W are 32W, and then plus 144.
Where'd you get 32W?
36W minus 4W. Then we've just got to distribute that W through. Fair enough? So we have -W cubed plus 32W squared plus 144W equals 4,608. Now, just like the last problem, we've got a polynomial. We want to solve it. Our first step is to move everything to one side. Now, instead of moving the 4,608, which might seem simpler, I'm going to move this stuff. I'm going to move the stuff on the left-hand side. That way I get a positive first term. That makes things a little smoother. So we'll have 0 equals a positive w cubed minus 32w squared minus 144w plus 4,608. And we got to factor this. Now remember, when we have 4 pieces, we use that process we call factor by grouping. Okay, we factor the first 2 first. What do they have in common? A w squared. What's left? W minus 32. Now, we're not exactly sure what 144 and 4,608 have in common, but if we want them to start with, if we want what's in parentheses to be w minus 32, then it's a pretty good guess that we're going to have to remove an entire 144. So how many times does 144 go into 4,608? 32 times. Okay? Coincidence? I think not. So instead of taking out 144, let's take out negative 144. That way we'll have a positive w and a negative 32 to perfectly match our first set of parentheses. Okay? If we took out a positive 144, we'd have negative w and positive 32 and be just a little bit off. So we'll take the negative 144. So far so good? So what does this become?
W squared minus 144 times W minus 32.
All right. Question is, are we done factoring? Well, it's not because we still have the 0. The question is, are all of our terms fully factored? Why not, Biscuit?
Because of the W.
Mm,
No. Because there's 32 and 20.
no. Anybody see what can be factored? Not by itself. But that whole thing altogether is a difference of 2 squares. Right? 2 terms, subtraction in the middle, and both terms are perfect squares. What's w squared the perfect square of? What's 144 the square of? 12. So we have w minus 12 and w plus 12. Okay, that's what this becomes. And we still have the w minus 32. So we have 3 terms, which is not unusual when you have a function, a polynomial with a 3rd degree. Okay? Since that exponent was 3, sometimes you can factor it into 3 different pieces. Okay? You can't ever factor it into more pieces than that. Okay? If I got 3 pieces, there's no way I can factor. If I got a 3rd degree, there's no way I can factor it into 4 pieces. Sometimes you can only factor it into 2, but oftentimes you can factor it into 3. So what are our solutions for w?
12 negative 12, 32.
You're so good at raising your hand. So we got our 3 terms for our width. Those are our possibilities for width. Now, which one of those can we get rid of right away? The negative 12. Also good at raising your hand. Okay? Because we can't have a negative width. Right? This, otherwise our terrarium would be like a black hole. Yeah, you'd be sending your frogs and snakes and lizards into another dimension.
Bye-bye.
Now, they said that our length has to be greater than 10, right? And our length was 36 minus w, right? If I put in 32 for w, if I choose my width to be 32, is that going to be greater than 10? No. So that means we can't use the 32 either. We have to use w equals 12. So if w equals 12, what's our length? 24. 36 minus 12. And what's our height? Gotta look back at the picture. The height was w plus 4. So our height will be 16 inches. Now let's do a quick check and make sure that that works. Does 12 times 24 times 16 equal 4,608. Does that work? Yes. Okay. That means that that works to get the volume that we were looking for. If we came up with a number that wasn't 4,608, we'd be in trouble. Make sense? Questions? Comments? Concerns? All right.
Sniper marks.